welcome back, everyone, to the Cancel for Maintenance podcast. If this is your first time joining us, we're a show that takes a behind-the-scenes look into the gritty, non-glamorous life of aircraft maintenance. We share some laughs, impart some wisdom, all in hopes of giving you that split-second relief in your day that can hopefully prevent mishaps. I am your co-host, Six.
I'm MVP.
And our third host, Mr. Shoreline, is silently in the back, monitoring our audio, making sure our faces stay fit for radio. Today, we're back again, and we have a guest today. He is a aviation test engineering manager. Wow, I almost tripped on myself saying that. He's a test engineering manager. He has a various experience in avionics, a lot of Air Force related stuff, a lot of things that test to make sure other things work, if that's the best way of really putting it lightly.
No, that's pretty good.
He's a well-rounded aerospace individual.
I mean, coming from the flight line, everybody has to be well-rounded. We all help each other.
This is true. However, I think I took well-rounded a little too literal, and it became physical. Like I'm physically well-rounded.
I mean, I've been physically well-rounded since I retired from the Air Force.
Please welcome Rod. Hi, Rod.
Hi.
Hey.
What's up, Rod?
Long time no nothing, Rod.
I know, right?
It's been a minute. And so, not to shamelessly plug your other endeavors, Rod here is also having a leadership course for all those who want to expand their leadership capability, discover their full potential, realize they have potential, and then pass it on to others. Hell yeah!
So for those of you
who think they have potential, realize that they don't, and then give them the potential.
Right?
Is that too on the nose, Rod? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's pretty damn on the rose, yeah. So what I noticed coming out of the Air Force and going to the civilian DoD contracting kind of stuff was how few managers actually work on trying to improve the outputs of the people, the team that's working for them. They focus on like, oh, what time did you show up? And that's it. Like they focus on the easiest things. And I've just seen so many technicians withering under this poor leadership that to be fair, they never were taught. They've just been told what to do by their bosses, which just makes them yes men. So I just want to try to make things better because I feel like the techs, the employees, the lowest level, the work culture can improve for them if managers know what they're doing.
I mean, say those parts louder, please.
And I mean, the touch labor is kind of the backbone of the industry. Somebody's got to do the actual work.
Yep.
So as a manager, I feel like the best thing you can do is make the lives of those individuals that much easier. So the hardest part of their day is the actual touch labor, the building and fixing and innovative side of it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's all I'm trying to give them is the freedom to do their job and do it well, create an environment of success. And if we can get that across multiple sectors, I think that more employees will be happier. And I was just listening to a thing the other day. They had I don't remember who it was. There was a study done where they took a high-performing team of 5 people and put one negative person on their team. And they found it dropped their output by like 25%.
Oh, I mean, I know on deployments in the past, deployments can be rough enough as it is, but if you're there with a solid crew, even if you're getting shot at, it's still a pretty good day. But you could have a deployment where the sun shines every day and there's no attacks and everything's just working and nothing's breaking and everything's meeting schedules, but you got one negative Nancy on there, so to speak, and then you come back off that trip and you're like, that was the worst trip ever. I'd rather got shot at.
You make that one person the manager, now everybody's having a bad deployment.
Yeah, well, obviously that's what happens in most cases. We're like, well, we can't have them going on the road no more and mucking up things over here, so we'll just have them muck up things from back home.
Mm-hmm.
And you really took read my mind on that one. No, you guys are both reading my mind on that. So like, especially, you know, when you have one individual who just for whatever reason is just not meshing with the team, right? Either they're too negative, they don't know enough, or whatever the case may be, or the yes men, right? It's bad when that one person comes in, it just really spreads that cloud of negativity around, and then everyone starts breathing it in, and next thing you know, like they're all having a bad time. They're realizing that they have a bad time. And then more so as to what you said, Rod, when that person's in charge of people, you know, it's what's the
South Park where the one guy was like, okay, what you're going to want to do is treat your team not right, and if you don't, you're going to have a bad time. Was that South Park?
Yeah, you're going to have a bad time. He's like a ski instructor.
Yeah. If you French fry when you're supposed to pizza, you're going to have a bad time.
That is it. And hot take on a lot of this stuff is majority of these managers. I mean, we all come in there like wanting to make an impact, right? Do something good, right? And then, but when you try to actually absorb some of the stuff, you're kind of just left to the wolves, you know, for a good chunk of time, right? And then a lot of people can argue that, well, if you were just had the right stuff, or if you had the right technical skill, or wazi excuses up the ladder and stuff. I mean, I can get away. I've been in teams where I can get away with the boss had absolutely no knowledge technically about what was going on, but it was a damn good boss. And vice versa. I had a boss who knew a whole bunch of stuff, but it just sucked to work around him because he just felt like he could solve anything, right? Like you're just not trying hard enough.
So one of the things,
micromanaging. Nobody here knows as much as I do, and you're all dumb because of it. And so now, not only do I have to lead and manage this crew, now I have to do all the individual jobs as well.
Yeah, so that is a weak leader who just doesn't trust their people.
Ooh, say that part louder.
So I was on my last deployment while I was active duty. The lead for my shop that I would have been had I not been an E7 at the time, Master Sergeant running the flight line. Whenever there was something that came up, like a questionable solution for a fix or something, I just look at him and be like, really? And be like, we'll go get back on it. I mean, I used my experience as a way to poke holes on their story to make sure that we had a good output, not to tell them how to do their job.
Right. And, you know, this reminds me of a listener that sent us an email. MVP, you might recall this, where an individual was asking about, hey, how do I adapt? How do I be a good employee? Because said person was like brand new mechanic, brand new to the job, brand new to the organization. And a lot of this person's managers were like non-technical people. Like they do the bare minimum of aviation. So they're like wanting to make all these changes, do some Six Sigma stuff, do some lean project stuff, Valley Stream stuff, right? Like things that just fundamentally shift how the shop works, which I guess is fine if it really warrants that. But the issue was like they just had a hard time like really absorbing things because the managers didn't know how to do things, and they're trying to drink from a fire hose pretty much, and they're with trying to find a mentor who's really going for bat for them. But since they're so new and they're trying to absorb stuff, they feel like they're impeding the output of things, right? Like, I can't do this fast enough. I'm making too many mistakes and so on and so forth. Like that really screws with people to the point where like, am I even meant for this? Right.
I mean, that is one of the biggest issues you're going to run into in life in general, confidence levels. Am I good at this? I had a tech in one of my prior positions. She was amazing, but she didn't believe in herself. Once she started to understand that she knew what she was doing, she's become like the go-to for that team. Like everybody trusts her. And because of that kind of stuff, I try to take those individuals who have high confidence, and I'll take the brand new people who are just like, we have an intern right now. I assigned her a mentor. She didn't have to go find one. I assigned her one.
That's actually
a good thing that doesn't happen a lot. Right? Mentorships aren't used a lot, and more importantly, no one usually assigns somebody one. Typically, I mean, so
no, it's true.
Kudos to you, but that's typically what happens.
Well, this is my third year doing it. My first year, I did not do it. I sucked, but I've learned. Now they just want to do well. They, especially these young interns and new employees coming in right now. I was thinking about it this morning, like Gen Z, what I've seen from Gen Z workers is that they just want to know what's expected of them before they start the job. And I kind of attributed that to their time in high school and junior high, middle school, whatever you want to call it. They put out rubrics now. Like I can think of times in my high school when we had rubrics and times we didn't. I think it's across the board now. So they know what is going to be expected of them when they do the job in high school, and they're expecting that in the workplace, but it's not been like that. I'm trying to make it like that.
Yeah, because most of the time when you jump into the workplace, they say, well, what's expected is kind of what was in the job posting. Mm-hmm. But, from there on, it's kind of yours to figure out. Just like we were talking earlier, getting air quoting here, feedback on a project, but you have to remind those individuals who are giving feedback on the project that there was no guidelines or goal given in the beginning of it. It was, I don't know, put something together and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, well, I can make that, look 100 different ways. So
and then they show
a little more, right? But they don't do that, and I think that maybe that's what people are expecting. And just to add more to your Gen Z and school rubrics, so just a few hours ago, had a conversation with my niece. Just started high school, freshman, and I said, "Hey, how's the first couple of days of school? What have you guys learned so far? What are they telling you you're going to learn? And I don't know. We haven't talked anything school wise yet. So what the hell you been doing in class every day? Every class we go into, like, we have to sit down and read the school guidelines and basically understand how we're supposed to act and conduct ourselves in the classroom, blah, blah, blah. Basically, setting those guidelines. Here's what you're supposed to do every day. And it's one of those where, like, we're wasting time with that kind of
there is a time waste, but at least they're trying to ensure that every student knows. It's better than I've seen them with a lot of corporations. They actually seem to bank on the fact that people don't know what the policies are.
Well, they're hoping you don't know so they can use the policies against you, right?
Yep.
That's just that.
So yeah. Telling these kids that they need to read a policy, I'm actually pretty cool with that.
Yeah. I guess some of it, though, I look at it as like, hey, don't be a jackass in the classroom. Some of that where it's like, you didn't learn that when you were in kindergarten? You know what I mean? Like,
there is some of that, but I've been dealing with people who are in their 30s doing things that are like in junior high. So,
well, fair point.
I'm in this conversation and I'm attacked. Well, I'm glad you guys brought that up because even with kids nowadays, like they have to read and sign a syllabus, right? At the lowest grade level now. I think fourth grade they give them a syllabus. It was mind blowing to me. Like I didn't even get a syllabus until I was like high school, maybe
college.
Yeah. Well, the syllabus was like general stuff, right? It's kind of like here's the guidelines. It's usually like 12 maybe, and it's always like some catchy phrase kind of thing. So like you can easily remember it. It's like so. What's the word I'm trying to go for? Like it's like one of those like a cartoon show tune kind of a saying. It's quirky, it's corny, but it's memorable, right? Like it's usually something like whatever your school mascot is, like a eagle never does this or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. it has like basic syllabus, like this is what your grades are going to be factored into and such, right? But nowadays, like they do that stuff for every single class. I'm like, Jeebus.
I mean, I get it. That way the students know exactly what to expect. They know how they're going to be graded throughout the year. There's less subjective when you're just like, oh, the teacher doesn't like me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that follows into the manager just doesn't like me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess, yeah, the same token with the rubric is it also gives you kind of guidelines, or not guidelines, but like due by dates, right? Like, hey, here's what's due and here's when it's due. And so that also turns into, it prevents nobody told me or my teacher didn't tell me. So think back in the day, 30 kids in a classroom, teacher says, oh, by the way, the bells just rang. Everybody's running out of the room. By the way, don't forget, this is due at the end of next Friday. And some kids don't even hear that. And that same thing in the adult life. Oh, I didn't hear that. And so when they get an F, they're going, that's not my fault. And you didn't tell me. You didn't remind me. I mean, my own kids do that when I go tell them to clean up dog poop out of the backyard. Hey, did you guys clean up dog poop today? Trash is tomorrow. Oh, well, you didn't remind me. I swear to God. You know what I mean?
Not my job to remind you.
Right.
I said, it's on the board. I wrote it down on the little whiteboard, the chore board, right? I wrote it down on the board. Right. It's not my job to remind you to go read the board. It's there. There's stuff on there. And that's where that's kind of this back and forth, right, that we're having here where you can see the goods and bads of it, but at some point they have to take accountability on their own.
Right.
Well, that's the biggest problem with all of business is accountability.
Yep. And I see that's kind of like blending into the technical side of things, right? Like they'll have like for lack of better words, a job board, right? They'll have like a list of to-dos and like you kind of sort of just pick one, right?
I mean, that's kind of exactly how we work.
or like a call board, I guess. I get like whatever it's called in your areas. Forgive me. I've heard it called different things. Job board, call board.
We're different from most people. The team that I'm in charge of is very different than most because we're not assigned to any one program. We help multiple projects.
Ooh, so what's that called? In Agile, jeebus. I just learned this not so long. I'm failing everybody.
It's been a while since I've read Agile.
It's kind of like a backlog, right?
Yeah.
It's like a backlog and they have like this pull system where you only pull one when you finish one kind of thing instead of just getting overloaded with a whole bunch of stuff, which is
that's like, all Scrum. But
that's Scrum. Yep.
Yep. So, like what everybody does nowadays, especially on the technical side of things, right? Like they just say, we have these many flights to hit. I don't care how it happens. Just do it. Right. And so once in a while, you have that one technician who just wants to be Superman for a day and just pound it out. Right. Or, like they, for whatever reason or another, they just love doing 12 things at once and they can remember it all or something to that effect. But like going back to like that one previous listener who sent us that message, when you don't know anything and you say, hey, we got these 5 things we need to hit, like, what do I do? Right. And that kind of goes into the point, right, with the syllabus and the rubrics. Because if you're a brand new tech and you don't even know what you're doing or what's kind of expected of you, and I've seen this being played different ways where like they'll say like, what was in your job description? Yeah, well, it also says I can do whatever the fuck my manager tells me to do as a job description, which is like a blanket statement for take out the trash or something, right?
It also says I'll be the focal point for these 5 things, and I've been not the focal point of any of those, the whole time.
Yeah. So and so like when we go into like the technical side of things, if you're actually like having to learn some of this stuff, you're all lost in the sauce because like, well, you're expected to know this. Sure, I know basic, right? I know how to run wires and tap out screws, but what the hell is that?
I feel like that's one of the big issues at least in the industry we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Like they'll bring people in who have no idea what they're doing, give them a week-long class and say, go ahead and go. And as opposed to like, I'm sure you saw this, 6 MVP. I don't know if you saw this. I remember when I first joined the Air Force, like I wasn't allowed to sign anything off. I just followed everybody around and watched what they were doing at first. They had me start replacing parts. It was really basic stuff to start building me at a low level and then grow into being an avionics technician. We don't do that. They get like a week of training and like, okay, go drill holes.
Yeah, and it's because these companies, I think, so I have experienced some of that, right? So in my first job, and for all the flaws that that company had, but but one thing they did, at least back then, is they had like a 6 week Gen Fam course, right? Mm-hmm. And you take that. They had a training asset, and you go out there and you would remove engines and tear the engine apart and learn how to do certain inspections. Then you'd remove the gear and change out actuators, and you did all these things as a new hire. So at least by the time you hit the floor, you had some idea of what was going to happen, but you still weren't allowed to sign anything. Mm-hmm. You just got attached to a senior mechanic, and then you'd be following them around for months. I mean, months, and you wouldn't sign jack shit.
I mean, for most of us, we were scared to sign stuff because we understand what the outcomes of all this is. Like working a flight line, you know that when you're putting your signature on those forms or whatever, the discrepancy, signing it off, you're taking that life crew's hand and life into your hands. It's very important.
And to add to this, right, when you have like some individuals who went to a robust A&P school, for instance, right, like you got like a associate's degree out of it, you're kind of walking in feeling like hot shit. You know what I mean? I mean, all things considering, you're smarter than the average person, right? We get it. But you get that rude awakening, and that's when their confidence level really goes into the dumps, when like they realize the pace, they realize like what's like, you know, it's like unspoken, but it's shown to them kind of thing. Like it's expected for you to work 17-hour days. I mean, some places do it, some places don't. Some places they kind of like, they don't want they want to save the OT for the senior people, whatnot. But in some outfits, right, like they're the ones doing all like the low intelligence, high labor work, you know, like sweeping out the grates or dumping the hazmat cans or whatever the case may be, and they'll get racked for hours on end, and they technically didn't learn anything. And then after they're already physically drained from running all over the place to do like errand boy stuff, and then they say, "Oh, by the way, you got to finish this OJT sheet within 6 months." I'm like, when the shit am I going to find time to do that? I'm like, figure it out, bro.
I think I was lucky with that because like we really focused, my first base when I was brand new to aircraft, we really focused on making sure that people understood what they were supposed to do. We were allowed to learn, but there was a big focus on learning still. So it was stressful to learn, but we had the time to make sure that it was set in place, I guess. Like we had the knowledge in place before we could start signing shit.
I feel it.
I like how you said the training was stressful, and not so much in a derogatory way, but meaning that emphasis was placed upon everything that you were doing to show the importance of why you were doing it. Just like you said, you're taking the life of the aircrew into your hands by doing those jobs. That's where the stressful side of it came in, because if you messed up in any way, I mean, somebody was on you going, "Hey, doing it that way, this drives this actuator screw arm in the opposite direction, thereby puncturing through this bulkhead into the wing tank, and now you're losing fuel." It's extremes, but I mean, I'm just giving an example.
Makes sense.
There, and do you guys think the reason training isn't to that level, right, to the level we're talking, isn't done so much anymore as time and money to do so? We need people out on the floor now. We need bodies there to do these things. But I kind of view it as, 10 real experienced guys could probably do the job of 40 inexperienced. So why not just take the
Absolutely.
time now and put these people through a real good training regimen, so by the time they get to the floor, they're actually useful to the experience, right?
From everything I've heard, it used to be like that for DoD contracting. Military retirees get out and they'd get a job working hands-on the aircraft, but they were already trained. They'd already done X amount of years in the military, so they're already showing up with aircraft experience under their belts. And now when they're being asked to drill a hole for manufacturing, they know what they're doing and they know how to apply the standards and hold to standards. Whereas some of these people are being hired straight out of Walmart, and they know how to stock, they know how to put things on shelves, but that doesn't mean they know what to do with an aircraft.
And to no fault of their own, really, because what do you expect me to do, bro? I've never seen a plane before now, but I'm here, and so this kind of makes me wonder from your side of the house, at least for test engineering, like what's that learning curve like for someone to do stuff, right? Because let me preface before, like when it comes to testing stuff, I'm thinking like test cells, air data sets, like something outside of bits. You know what I mean?
So we do most of our test on the road. My lab, like I said earlier, isn't connected to any one program. So we jump around our corporation to any small programs, especially who don't have their own flight test technicians of our caliber. We are very specific to the instrumentation side of flight test. We put on the strain gauges, accelerometers, thermistors, all these different instrumentation to get the data from the aircraft for flight test. My guys, they start learning strain gauging pretty early on. That's one of our big statements of work. They're not good at it for a while, though. And we do have some customers to say, they're just in our same corporation, but I just completely lost my train of thought. That'll have to be edited out.
Customers that have expedited timelines. Is that where you were going with it?
Yeah, timelines. There we go. So, like, we'll be supporting one team and they want things done super quick, and then another team will be like, okay, we can push things out a little bit, and there's a lot of balancing to that. But we'll put some of our younger techs on these ones that can stretch out a little bit, because they need the experience before they're put on these ones that are very tight time limits. We do some work that it generally takes about 4 days to do for an experienced person, but if it's an inexperienced person, that can jump up to 8 days.
But then again, like you said, like if it's not time constricted, that's a good teachable moment, right?
And I always try to make sure I'm the project or program manager, whoever I'm working with, is good with that too, because I feel that they should be a part of that. Like, okay, I get that you're paying for this work to get done, but you should also be paying a little bit for training too.
Right. Yeah. And I totally agree with that, right? Especially if they're new. And to that one listener's point, right? Like that should be a focus. Maybe not just for you, but for the leads and the people who are doing all this Six Sigma process improvement kind of stuff. Like, hey, like I get it, you guys want to lean out your lead time, but let's also bake in there some training time too. Like, hey, what's a realistic timeline for a person to like absorb some of this stuff, right? Because I mean, if you just do a blanket statement like, oh, 6 months, this person should understand anything and everything within 6 months. I mean, like they can ballpark it, but are they actually proficient at this? Especially,
I feel like the military, the way they did, at least in the Air Force, is they gave like an ultra unrealistic time period of extra long to finish everything. because people would wait to the last minute. Now,
Yeah.
other people that just wanted to get like the testing over with, they jump ahead
Mm-hmm.
and you'd get it done much sooner. But yeah, there was usually like a really long timeline to get qualified. I don't see that in the civilian world.
I see bits and pieces. Like I've seen them where like it's non-existent or it takes forever, right? And that's why kind of like say with apprenticeships, like 3-4 years of apprenticeship, like does it really have to be 3 to 4 years, right? I mean, if you were like say in IASA, for instance, hell, you could be studying for 16 years and you still won't be licensed for everything. But unlike here in the US, and I think Canada kind of runs in a similar fashion, like you do 4 years and like we're expecting you to know everything like okay. But then you get those lucky few, because I think some of the apprenticeships it goes by hours, not by time, or not by like not by years, right?
Yeah.
So like say like 2,000 hours or something like that, and that can take you anywhere from 3 years to 6 depending, right? But then you get those stellar few who just land at that dream place where you can just smash out 2,000 hours in like 6 months.
Like the Japanese, right? You work with a master for 6 to 10 years. It seems like in some professions,
right?
Like but by the time your training's done, you yourself are essentially a master. Like that's how they work. So there's never a shortage of a master.
It's true.
In that system, right? And we've talked about this before, but I feel like especially our industry could really benefit from that. Where we say, you kind of get out on the floor and you're paired up with a senior mech for a while, but that may be a week or two, and then they're off doing something else, and you're paired up with somebody else, and then you're left to your own to figure out your OJT. But I think it could really benefit from having that kind of a pairing between a master or senior mech tech and a new person.
So I do know that some of the leads at the corporation I work for do that. They take that on themselves. They'll go out with the newest member on their team, and they will make sure that person knows what they're doing. But that is very individualized. It's not like it's an expectation across the sector. And those teams end up being some of the higher performing teams because the lead is actually engaged.
Yes. And I can attest to this deeply because I've been a part of teams where we had an air quotes apprenticeship / mentoring program. I'm saying this in like the most sarcastic of air quotes. Like it exists. We have like file folders that say we have them. Right. They built one that has your name on it. They have notes and stuff on it, but they're more like checks in the box than actual like progression. And one can argue with me that, like when it comes to like teaching and instructing and mentoring and coaching and all this other stuff that, well, this is personal to you, right? And what's personal to you, it's not, may or may not be what's best for the organization, which fair. I get it. But think about like the technical loss you're getting from this, right? Like if you're not investing actual time to like help spool this person up, yeah, it's gonna take a while. Like you might have a lead time in your project or your flights or whatever. But imagine when this person leaves, like your most knowledgeable person for one reason or another just leaves. Like he's had it with you, he gets hurt, or she like gets promoted somewhere else, and now you have like this huge knowledge gap, and now you're like, well, what do we do now?
That's when you start relying on tribal knowledge and things start going to shit.
Yes. And we've also mentioned this in a previous episode where tribal knowledge is not inherently bad, but if you kind of go into like, if your standards, your technical expertise, your leadership, your mentoring, your coaching and all that, if that's trash, then for sure your tribal knowledge is going to be in the dirt too, because you'll default to what you practice. And if what you practice is trash, yeah,
that output's gonna be garbage.
Yeah, and it's kind of like with you guys with testing, right? Like if you just slap on gear without like doing like a a calibration check or or like a pre-use test. You just roll it.
So I've worked in 2 different labs with this same job doing instrumentation, and 2 different mindsets. The current lab, my co-manager has been doing this for a very long time, and when he teaches the courses for strain gauging, he tells them, you need to be able to see that it's good. Like, if it's not pretty when it comes out, there's a very good chance it's not going to be good to begin with, because these are very intricate work pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And the other lab that I worked in, they're like, just slap it on and go. We don't have the time to sit there and worry about it.
Mm.
But the time that they're not sitting there and worrying about it, they're filling with going back to refix it later.
Yep. It ain't so. say it ain't so. And I think that's like one of the big detrimental parts of speed. Like everyone's all about like, just give me the product, give me the service as fast as humanly possible. Sure. But you know, if you have
quality.
Yeah, if your quality is not baked into that, if your mindset and your training and the stuff that you default to is not at least well rehearsed and practiced, it's going to be trash. And you're going to have to spend all that time undoing it and rerunning it through the process, the tests say, and however many times until you figure out that you forgot to set something right. I can recall a specific time when we were running a air data test for the pitot system, and it was failing left and right. Like, why is this failing? It took hours. Like, I can't remember how long, but it was a long time. And the reason why it was failing is because they didn't properly seat one of the adapters onto the pitot tube itself, and then one of the static ports, they were supposed to cover it, but they didn't. So it was just pumping air. For one, it had a bad seal from the pitot itself, but then as it's pumping air, it's just leaking out from the other side. I'm like, oh my freaking God, man. Like step 1, guys, come on.
I went out for a job prior to retirement. It was, again, pitot-static like you're talking about. And it went into this manifold. And it was supposed to go out. I remember our commander was the one who did the write-up. Like, he's like, this information on my airspeed indicator isn't reading correctly. I don't understand what it's showing me. Come to find out that this manifold it was going into, it was crossing lines with the static lines. So, yeah, you weren't going to get it because it was reading static for a pitot. But the worst part was this aircraft had been flying for a while and no other aircrew had even noticed.
Oh my God. That's kind of like,
so it makes you go, what are you using the data for then?
Yeah.
Is it necessary anymore?
Right? It's like it pulls too hard to the right. That's kind of like when you crisscross your power steering fluid lines. It just kind of
that's why we got trim.
Yeah. Or what's another one? Like stability control. Like it's pretty much like power steering, but yeah. Come on, guys. It's step 1. But that again kind of goes into like the ensuring the safety, reliability in the tests, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I mean, what would you say probably would be one of the best like advice to ensure like the safety and reliability of the test that's being conducted?
I mean, one of the things I focus on is individual strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And as you get to know your team, you'll start to see who has strengths for what. And for people doing tests, you want their strength to be attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
There are too many things that can be missed with people not paying attention or just half-assing a job because they don't see it as important. You want those people that are overly anal to ensure that everything's caught, all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed. But it takes you knowing your team to do that.
Mm-hmm. And then we're talking about this in spite of time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those like opportunity cost kind of things, right? Now we're talking about economics, but it definitely is like, well, what's the risk of taking that extra minute or whatever, extra minute, hour, whatever, than it is to just breeze through it.
I always try to get the max amount of time for every job that we're working, just to make sure that my guys are getting trained.
Mm-hmm.
I try to hit par. I don't try to go under. That way, people the hours are allowing us to train.
Yes,
because this way, in the future, when they really need it, when you need something, a strain gauge applied the first time correctly, that's when all this is going to come through and be of value.
But I'm so glad you mentioned that, because nowadays everything's all about speed, or all about I think, what's the word, gain. Everyone wants gain. Like, we want to be under par. We want to shoot eagles every single time, right? -2.
Under par becomes the new norm, and then you have to shoot under that par and get quicker and quicker and quicker, and
it keeps escalating.
Yeah, you're moving the goalpost every single time, right? And it's never in your favor. So I'm like, then we have like this unrealistic expectation of things where, well, you guys got it done in like 20 minutes the last time. How'd you do that? Like, well, see,
you're gonna have to not ask many questions.
I need you all to get real cool with a lot of stuff real fast.
We can have it running, or we can do it right.
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because there's, that gives that false connotation to a lot of people, like, oh, like, well, these people got it done fast, right? And then they can compare it to, like, negatively compare it to, like, say, airlines, for instance, right? Like, oh, these guys are always on time, they're always making their marks. Like, sure, but it's going to cost you like a shit ton of money.
So one of the things that I learned as a pro soup was, generally it takes 8 hours to pre-flight a KC-135, which is the aircraft I worked while I was active duty. If we put the crew chief who had done the last pre-flight back on this aircraft, they already know the majority of the problems. They can significantly shorten that time, because they already have experience with the aircraft. They already know what's wrong. They know what they saw previously, and if they see something new now, they're really quick to jump on it. But you could knock down an 8-hour pre-flight down to 2 hours, having had that experience to know what's going on. Like, you can look in the flap well or whatnot and see, okay, yep, everything's still there. We're good here. I don't have to pay as much attention.
Yeah, and
we tried to do that in the past. We would try to send, birds that would shuffle between locations, but we always tried to give them a home station when it came to, time for maintenance, right? So they might, roll through different sites when it's just a quick turn, just hot fueling, and send them on their way. But when it came time for actual maintenance, we'd try to return them to I'm air quoting a home base of operations, because, just like what you were saying, the people there become intimate with that bird. They know all of its quirks. It's, this one always runs about 5 degrees hotter, on this cooling pack than the other birds for whatever reason. But they just have that intimate knowledge. So again, like you said, if something's wrong, they're going to notice it a lot faster than somebody who hasn't seen that bird in a long time.
Oh, absolutely. And then, like, even the military takes it to the next step of, like, C5s and C17s have an in-route system where they can fly anywhere in the world, and most bases have an in-route that they can land at. And there's different levels for the amount of work they can give them. Like, I think a level 1 can pretty much just only refuel and pre-flight. But like a level 3, like Ramstein Air Force Base out in Germany, they can do anything and everything that they need to for those C5s and C17s to tear them apart as needed. So, yeah, okay, the crew chief might be at home station. He might have or he or she may have the most knowledge on that aircraft, but there's still people out there on the road who are pretty well intimate with these aircraft as well.
Right, And I think a lot of that comes through the exposure piece, right? And that kind of echoes what we've been saying earlier. Like you got to afford the time for them to kind of figure it out, right? Not just have like this unexpected or unrealistic standard. Like, well, this flight or this maintenance action, this test event, this whatever, it's taken 3 hours in the past. So we want you to do an 8-hour job in 3 hours. I'm like,
dude,
but are
video games have a learning curve to them? Like Metal Gear Solid teaches you the first chapter how to play the video game. We don't do that too much in the real world.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like I don't get pop-up prompts, right? Like press B to shoot webs or whatever.
They call it the prologue. We don't get a prologue in work.
Yeah.
I mean, I did in the Air Force, but I can see how the majority of the civilian world does not get that. And it's concerning because I want to make sure that they know what they're doing before I let them sign off stuff.
Yeah. Right. And what's it? And they actually give them like a little bit of wiggle room in case they mess something up, right?
Oh, absolutely. So I had a commander once that said, you're allowed to make mistakes. Just don't make it twice.
Mm-hmm.
Learn from your mistakes. That's all he wanted. Like, okay, cool. Yeah, you screwed that one up. Let's see how you bounce back.
And I feel that that ties into like the mentorship piece of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have like a solid experienced person to kind of like help you through the gaps.
And knowing that your boss isn't going to hold it against you while you're learning.
Yes. Say this part louder, please. Because I've had it time again, right? Like we've all had this type of experience, right? When you mess something up one time because you literally did not know better. And then you're going to go see the big man or the big boss in his office, his or her office, and then you get an ass chewing that you totally did not know you warranted. And then now you're just learning out of fear. Like, I don't want to do anything because I don't know what
yeah, you're going to get your ass chewed for doing something you didn't even know you did was wrong.
Yeah.
And that's where, tying back to the earlier conversation, why I was saying like the rubrics and Gen Z, they like to know what's expected of them beforehand so they can probably prevent themselves from getting the ass chewing on the back end of it.
Bingo. Say this part louder. Say this was like a freaking leadership 101 course in itself, right? And it definitely ties into like say the technical piece of it, because like if you're too scared to want to learn, then your knowledge gap is gonna just keep on widening the more you progress, until the point where like, well, you're fundamentally useless. So let's just go count rags, or
and I've seen that with the old lab that I was in. They currently have a guy who is very scared to do work, and he's their worst worker because of it. Not that he's a bad worker, he just has zero confidence in his own abilities.
Is his zero confidence stemming from just a lack of confidence in himself, or has there been a past experience that would have pretty much stripped that sense of confidence right out of him?
I can't answer that one, but I do know that as a manager with these techs, my goal is to consistently show them that they know what they're doing so that they feel that they know what they're doing. I don't care if they like that I like what they're doing. They need to know that they know what they're doing, if that makes sense.
It's kind of like, like the ADHD buildup. You gotta trick your mind to be productive by doing lesser productive stuff. I mean, it's a terrible tactic. I've heard it sometimes with people who have ADHD. Like they have no energy to do stuff, or they can't focus, or they distract themselves creatively by trying to do something smaller, easier, low energy. Like,
we have plenty of jobs like that in manufacturing. There's constantly jobs popping up that are just little minor things. And that's where I start all my younger, or I don't even want to say younger in this case, because I have had older people who have had a lack of confidence. I mean, even up to boomers, a lack of confidence in what they know what to do. And they've been doing this for years. And I attribute that to poor leadership in the past, though. Like what you were saying, MVP, about like, was this a bad something that happened in his life that made him non-confident, or something that he's just not confident because this is his first aircraft kind of thing. In this case, the kid in the old lab, he's just new to aircraft, and nobody has taken the time to be like, yes, this is correct, so that he knows he's doing well.
You know what I've seen that's also a major trip up for someone who has high confidence, like they get so used to a system of doing things, right? Like they know how this air data test set works. They know how this string gauge system works. They know how XYZ happens, and that they figured it out left and right. And then you drop something new onto them, but because aviation is forever evolving, you drop something new and they're like, what the shit is this? Right? And then they're like going from analog to digital. That was a huge culture shock for a whole lot of people. I'm like, what the heck is this?
That's kind of where the manager needs to come in and know the people that are, I don't know, less stressed out about new things. Because, example, I worked in the tool room and debrief and mobility equipment for a long time, like 3 years when I was active duty. And the first job that I had when I came back out to the flight line was testing the exhaust gas temperature EGT gauge against the recording system for flight data. In this case, it was on the FDR CVR where they just recorded everything so you could see what was happening during flight. And there was no technical guidance on how to do this, but there was, we had a tech data that told us how to run it, the EGT system from the ground without running engines. And then we just added a couple extra steps to make sure that the FDR was recording the same way. And if it wasn't, we knew we needed to change a part. But that was brand new. Nobody knew how to do that. And it was my first day back on the flight line. And I'm like, yeah, we can do that. So you need somebody with strengths that can think of, yes, can we do that? Yes, we can do that. Or absolutely say no. If it's against tech data, I will never, ever make one of my techs do it. Because will never ask them to put their career on the line.
Well, I'm really glad you made that point, because there's many a times that as we have all seen, where we have individuals who feel like they're smarter than the technical publication. Like, I've done this before all my life. I've seen this done a million times. Lazy dozy, playing to what was the phrase, MVP in one of our sessions that we sat into, Murphy's Law. You're playing into Murphy's Law. And it's not that if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. You're playing your chances to the point where the only thing that you're gonna run into is the failure. And sometimes, and these chances are cumulative. So if someone else burned out all the chances and you're the lucky one to roll the zero, then
that goes back to what I said earlier with, to quote, setting the environment. Sometimes you have to do some logistics ahead of time to make sure that you're going to be successful. If you're not doing that, it's going to fail.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And especially for a lot of these newer technologies, and I'm sure you're seeing a whole bunch of it with the test realm. Mm-hmm. If it's not dialed in right, you're going to get false readings all the time. It's
funny you mentioned new technologies, because one of the things that we have going for us right now is we have this engineer. He's a contractor currently who has retired from the 3 big DoD contractors. He's been doing flight tests since the 50s. Woo. Yeah, his knowledge on flight test, I would love to just sit down and interview him sometime just to hear some of the crazy stories. Because I've heard other stories before, I know Virgin Galactic at one point, their instrumentation system, to show some people that were interested in their instrumentation system, they faked it to show that yeah, look, our system's on. It wasn't on.
Neither confirm or deny that one.
But to be fair, and this is why I didn't say anything about it at the time, instrumentation systems, 99.999 repeated percent of the time will not cause a crash. Like, our stuff is just glued onto a wing to measure the flexing kind of thing. Like, we're not doing anything that's going to down an aircraft. Other people are doing that.
It's the setup to the test, right? Like they use the wrong glue, or they put it in the wrong spot. Yep.
We've gotten really good with some of that stuff. Like our NDI, my time in the military, NDI only came out to look at cracks. Our NDI at this corporation will come out and do precise alignments with a laser and show us exactly where we need to be putting down the strain gauge, and that's really useful.
Really cool. And like, what other type of like high speed stuff? I mean, I guess it's not high speed now, but what sort of innovations have you been seeing lately? I mean,
I don't see a lot of innovation. This is all very old technologies. So like a strain gauge is just a flimsy piece of film with some metal running through it that as it stretches, the resistance becomes higher and changes the reading.
Cell ones with the XYZ axis draw on them, or those, what are those ones called? Anyways,
I didn't hear the beginning of it. Sorry, I didn't hear.
I said, are those the row cell strain gauges?
So yes, we do some of those where they have multiple angles to them. They can be like at 90s or 45-degree angles. We have singles where we put them on, and we'll put them on different areas so they can get different angles of the stretching. I know that the newest aircraft our corporation has been working on has well over 2,000 strain gauges on it. And it's not a very big aircraft.
I believe it. I've been involved in some testing before where we were cutting holes into, bays, but there was no access panels. They were just where, like, you would put the spars and everything together, and then you would lay up over top of them, so you would never see them again. But at some point, we had to cut holes back into them to be able to put those gauges in to chase out the cracks and the stresses where everything was going.
So that newest aircraft I was talking about, our corporation did, they have glued off some areas that made me question whether, I was like, why don't we have access to that area? Because it's right behind a fuel tank. Couldn't you get a leak there? Like they literally glued off areas, big areas of the wing. You just
got to glue on panels instead.
It just blows my mind that nobody ever thinks, hey, we may need access to this sometime.
I mean, they'll figure it out when they have to drill holes to put it back on.
Yeah, that's when they're like, okay, we'll send a depot team out there to cut this panel and spend all this money on something that we should have already had in the first place.
That's when they find out that they cut into a bulkhead. Or not a, yeah, I think that's what it's like, one of those reinforced.
Or just one of the ribs.
Yeah, the ribs. Yeah. Hey, why is this aircraft flexing? Why is it leaning more? Like, oh, that's when you get stress analysis team in there, right? And they X-ray the thing. Like, oh no.
And the eye comes out. Well, you're missing a rib.
I mean, it's why its y-axis is like 10 degrees off. Like, what? Terrible.
Yes. Horrible.
But again, that just emphasizes from the technical side of things, right? You got to understand the equipment, and the only way to understand it, which goes into like the leadership piece, is to give them time to learn it, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel, I mean, I'm probably answering the question for you, but like, that has to be one of the biggest challenges, right? As a manager, especially, I'm going to put it in the perspective of a manager for now, because a lot of people like really split hairs and mix mash the definitions between leaders and managers. But from a manager standpoint, right, your objective is product, right? Whatever that is.
So to start with, I would like to say that every manager is a leader,
Yes.
whether it's good or not. Like you can be a bad leader and get the people there. They may get there on their own. It won't be smooth, but it'll get there.
Right. And you know, again, like it's going to like that service and product, right? Whatever it is, right? Your product is 50 deliveries in under 45 minutes, which is next to impossible. Or your product is a service where like you have an Uber driver that's available within 5 miles of you or something like that, right?
So I watch each of my techs to see what their strengths are.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are really good with minute work, which strain gauging is very like micro soldering kind of stuff. You can burn a gauge out really quickly if you leave a soldering iron on there. So I have an idea of who I can put on strain gauge jobs versus who I should put on like a wiring harness job. And that could work out very well for me because it may be that attention to detail is the person that's on the strain gauge, and this person who's working this harness has this completely other different strength that helps build that harness to, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I try to read my people to see what situations I should put them in. And now I don't just only put them there. I do try to get them like a breadth of experience, but when I put somebody without like attention to detail on a job, I'm not going to expect that detail to come through to me. Like
Right.
I don't sit there and expect them to send me something that I know they can't send me.
Right.
This is
And
the time for them to learn.
and I love that part, right? Because and I feel like that's a lesson that we all really should learn. Like, hey, what am I actually good at, right? Or you take an honest assessment of yourself. Because let's be real, like a lot of us like to talk up our own game. Like, yeah, I can do that, right? Or what's the thing? Fake it till you make it, right? Like, yeah, absolutely, I can do that. And then you like look it up or go Google it real quick. Like, how do I do this? I mean, good initiative. Don't get me wrong. Good initiative, you know, for you to try to learn. But if you genuinely don't know, just flat out say, I don't know, but I'll give it a shot.
I would love for my techs just to tell me they don't know. They all want to give it a shot. They all think that they can do it because I feel like they're scared to say that they can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would much rather hear that they can't do it and I can give them some additional training.
Mm-hmm.
But that's me.
I mean, you're absolutely right, right? Like, and I feel like that's a culture for aviation that we just need to continuously adopt, right? We say it out loud, but it's rare, or they're rarely given the time of day to actually exercise it, right? Like, hey, if you don't know something, say something, right? But most times, you know, we're like, hey, we don't got time for you to dick around, like. Get this thing going so we can get this flight out, or hurry up and move this along so we can go to step B
And
through
see,
Z.
that's where I step in and I'll straight up tell the project manager and be like, okay, we ran into problems. Yes, we're going over hours and I apologize for that. But not all of this is our fault either. Like sometimes it's engineering rework that they found out this example. We were building racks to record all the data from a flight test, and the coax wires were too thick to go through a hole, so they had to go back and replace all that coax wire with smaller gauge coax wire. It's not the tech's fault. That's engineering's fault. But it's, for some reason, it does come back on the techs still. I fight that.
Well, absolutely.
Because that is what really sets apart between good management or leadership and bad leadership, is having their backs.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said earlier, I won't make them sign off, and I would never make them sign off anything. I tell them if it's something I need signed off, I will ask them, how can you go about making this so you're willing to sign this off? Like, what work can you do to this to ensure you're willing to sign it off? But I will never just tell them to sign something off, because again, we take people's lives in our own hands. And I don't want that to fall back on anybody or have to go through the legal side of it.
That's a breath of fresh air, man. Because I mean, I've made jokes about this, and we've done so with our with our social media handles, where like shut up and color and freaking just sign it off, right? And some people have flat out said to us like, we'll never do that. Your license has or your certificate has all the weight, and Lazio is like, I agree, it has the weight to stop the show. However,
that's where I come in. I'm kind of a smartass and an asshole to my bosses, and I really enjoy, for lack of better term, malicious compliance. So I have no problem. One of my previous jobs, I upgraded a diagonal that should have been an X to an X, and forced one of the directors to come out and downgrade it for the flight. It wasn't going to be an issue. I didn't think it was going to be an issue, but the tech data said it should be an X. Mm-hmm. And if anything had happened during that flight, didn't matter if it was related to the issue that happened, the kid who put it under a diagonal would have lost his career.
Yeah. And I applaud you for doing that. And to emphasize the point, like, you will have some individuals who are very horse blind to the objective than it is to the people actually doing the work. Mm-hmm. Example was like that one joke we said, like, where nothing stops ops, and we say it half-heartedly as a joke because it has and does happen. Mm-hmm. Where you will make this happen, you will do this, I don't care what it takes, right? But they'll word it in such a way where it's not so much as telling you, but it kind of just like guilt trips, mm-hmm. And thankfully, we had a lot of individuals in that one comment who really voiced up and like, F that, man. Like, it's your certificate, it's your career, it's your license, it's your livelihood. By all means, yes, that's the right answer every time. If it's not what the regulations or it's not what the standards or whatever say, then you need to freaking pull the plug. But we've all been in situations, or we've all been in organizations where we've had those types of objectives that just for one reason or another just has to get hit. We have to make this happen. We have to do this. In a life or death situation, like say a fire or EMS situation, sure, right? I get the onesies and twosies, but if the what's the phrase? If the exception becomes the norm, then we've already failed. And I don't know any other way other than what you're saying, to where just people just not do that. Right? And
it's going to take people down at the lowest level to say, no, we're not doing that. And I'll tell you why. And then, yeah, you're going to complain and cry. Sure. But what are you going to do? I'm still following process and procedure. I'm still doing my job. I'm just telling you that I'm not doing it within your delusional time frame. I'm doing it under this, and here's the reasons why. And yeah, you're going to be mad, but at the end of the day, you can't touch me.
Yeah, right. Or if you want,
to get you a solid product.
Yeah, if you want it that bad, you sign it off. I mean,
I told my management that maybe a month or two ago. Well, go ahead and hurry up and do this. Now, if you want that bad, fam, go ahead and sign it. You knock yourself out. And lo and behold, surprise, surprise, the top priority all of a sudden it wasn't really that serious after all. Well, I guess we'll just wait and see what they decide to do. Oh, crazy. You were going to have me do it. And then you take all the credit and say, look what I did. But the minute you had to put your name to, you're like, well, we can probably hold off and see really what the best decision is that engineering comes up with.
Right. Exactly. Cool. Yeah. Exactly the point. And again, like to be like what Rod said, being like that malicious
malicious compliance.
Yeah, the malicious compliance, right? That doesn't come just on a whim, right? You have to like kind of learn that stuff. And I'm not saying learn it in a bad way, but you learn it through like really sticking to what's right. And and you typically find that in your standards and your regulations and your manuals and so forth. If it's not there, then doesn't exist. Now, I'm gonna probably get all these individuals who might just argue with me and say like, well, it doesn't tell me I shouldn't do it. I got you. I got it.
What I was going to say is aviation is science, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people have all these grand ideas. Oh, I want to do things this way, and if we do it like this, then it'll save so much time and money. Great, go ahead and do it. Oh, well, no, I mean, I'm telling you, and then, in hopes that I'll do it. And they're like, well, I just think it would be the best way we could really increase mission capability rates and all that. Fine. But again, aviation is science, and the difference between science and screwing around is writing it down. And I tell everybody on the programs I support, I said, you can damn near do anything you want to around here. I said, the only thing you have to do is you have to write it down in a process. And then at that point, it becomes law. But until then, you're just dicking around.
I mean, you kind of run into gray areas because of that. And that gray area has saved a lot of at least in the military, a lot of their careers, because I would use that gray area to allow them to bend rules, kind of thing.
So that's how I view myself, right, in my current role. I always say, I'm terrible from my departmental standpoint and what I do, but for operations, I'm the best because I find the grays to the gray and I operate within that, and I help people to operate within that. But again, what I'm telling like the crews that are out in the field and stuff, like, hey, we got this idea and we think we can pull it off, and if we can, it's going to be great, this, that, and the other. I said, cool, you just got to write it down though. I said, we can't just go and do this without whatever. So make the gray reality.
Or
I remember is if somebody challenges it, you can go, well, yeah, but it doesn't say specifically that we can't do it like this. It just says do this,
Mm-hmm. So that's
kind of one of those, just because they jump off a bridge. Should I? Well, no,
At a previous job, I saw some of that happening where we had techs who didn't want to go out and do a job because the tech data was written in a very weird way. It like referenced putting this panel on with a different job entirely because you could put two different panels on. I just started, you know what? I need this done for tomorrow so this aircraft can fly, go to the customer, whatever. So I just started putting an email. Be like, here's your written guidance. Go ahead and use this other tech data, and it's on me if something goes wrong. And that's how it should be, I feel like. I'm the manager. I'm the responsible one. I'm the one who should be taking the chances here.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I've done that before as well, where you go, what's your biggest holdup? Is it because you don't want the onus to fall on you? You're afraid to make that decision? Mm-hmm. If that's the case, just tell me. I have no problem shouldering that responsibility, but just tell me up front so I could have sent this email to you 4 hours ago.
My biggest thing I've found that's helped me the most in all this is how can I make everything be true? Like the policy and what I'm being told by, say, an engineer and the ability to fly tomorrow. How can I make all those standards be true to make it meet what I needed to do? And if I can't do that, then it's not flying tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. And I love the fact that you mentioned that. And that definitely inspires like the confidence in everybody. Like, okay, now it's not just lip service. It's not just, hey, fill out this OJT sheet or do whatever the case may be. Like just the check in the box / gap fills that we've all seen and done time and time again, right? And going back over, I'm kind of highlighting a lot of that stuff like that listener was mentioning. Like when you're just kind of left to the weeds to figure it out, or you have a lead that like is overtasked to kind of dump that knowledge on you, that kind of falls onto the manager's piece or whoever that leader of that section to like, okay, pump the brakes, let's either A, give you more time to figure things out, or put you on projects where it kind of leads you up into stuff like this, right? That incrementally, Jesus, I had a hard time saying that, advances you to that level of knowledge instead of just throwing you into the weeds and saying, well, you got an A&P cert, let's figure it out, friend. You know, you have the general knowledge. Sure, I have the general knowledge of how to stick panels on a plane, or I have general knowledge of how an engine runs.
I mean, a Cessna does not operate the same way as a 737.
Right, exactly, right? I mean, well, you have general aviation knowledge. You should know. Okay, let's take a time out here. A piston engine is a little bit different than this turbojet fan engine right here. Just, you know, there's a couple parts here that are just slightly different. Like I don't know, this freaking giant tank of freaking hydrazine. you know, cut me some slack here.
Yeah, and when it stops burning, that's when it starts becoming an issue.
Yes. Now we're going into hazmat stuff for all the fuelers out there, man. I do not envy you guys' job one bit. Fuelers, you have 100% my respect.
Absolutely. They have a rough job.
Yeah, and especially the ones that have to do the tank dives for fuel cell maintenance.
On KC-135, that was a major job. Like we were nothing but fuel tanks. Some of those fuel tanks I can stand up in, and I'm almost 6 foot tall.
Yeah, I can imagine. And
I remember I was on a deployment, and we had a forward body issue where it was leaking, and we didn't have any fuel tank certified people, but one of the other aircraft maintenance units did, and it was similar to our aircraft. So she had jumped up, this tech, and she jumped in there without a mask on. And I was like, whoa, hold up. You need a mask. Like, my eyes were burning 3 feet away from the hole going into the forward body. She just jumps in there like it's nothing.
Oh my God.
She's like, I don't even smell it
a long
anymore.
time ago.
Just walks out unscathed like freaking Superman. Like, don't ever do that again. I mean,
she didn't even smell it anymore. Like, how JPA Jet A has very strong smell.
Yes.
I can smell that shit from at least multiple tens of feet away. And she's not smelling it going into the fuel tank.
That's terrible. That's a terrible thing. Like, you are not allowed to be anywhere near a fuel tank, right? Anymore.
And they're real proud of that fact that they can. You're like, no, that's damage to your body. You know?
But to be fair, and I'm not saying that this is against them or anything. It's probably just part of the environment. Some of those people are some of the oddest people I've met.
They've evolved some type of adaptation, you know, right?
They just lost some more brain cells from fuel.
Right, they fried their brains.
It's like the Galapagos Island, you know, they develop qualities that exist nowhere else.
These people, kudos to anybody who can do fuel cell maintenance, because those guys, like, you go onto a reserve tank, those are small, tiny, like, you may not even be able to fit all the way to the end, and you have to find somebody smaller than you who can go out to the wingtip.
Yep. So that's kind of going on to people's strength. Like, you're small.
Yeah. We keep those people around as well, because the new aircraft we were working with, one of the bays we had to go into was just filled with components. And we had this one really small Filipino girl who, when we had an issue up above all the equipment, she was the only one who could fit.
I'm sorry, but you know, I mean,
I made sure that she got, like, we give out bonuses and stuff like that for hard work and everything. And since she was the only one, and I didn't want to burn her out on it, I was like, well, I got to give her a good reason to go in there. So I made sure I gave her a bonus for that.
I'd imagine so. I mean, like, hey, don't worry about it. Here's 6%, or like, here's an extra 18
here's an
hours.
extra 1,000.
Yeah, here's an.
Thank you for doing what you're doing. I may need you to do it again.
I feel like that's all of our aviation careers. Like, thanks for you doing it. I may need you to do it again. That should be a shirt. I'm gonna do that now. Let's coin this now.
Word.
So, wrapping up this, we learned a whole lot about leadership for one, the effects of good management and leadership, how technical stuff can just really benefit from having that mentorship tree, and then just calling the flag that you don't know anything or don't know something, and then vice versa, calling out the flag when you know something is wrong. What advice would you give for someone aspiring to enter the field of aviation and or aviation testing?
At first, be ready to listen, but later be ready to be the squeaky wheel, I guess. We had an aircraft once that we were trying to sell to the military that was, when they hit the brake, it was going off to the right like 13 degrees, which was out of tolerance. It was only allowed to go like 10% or 10 degrees, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I remember when they told us this, like everybody in the office is just sitting there nodding like, oh, okay, well, that's not good. And the pilot, one of our pilots, is like, yeah, if you just pump the brakes, it'll be good though. And everybody's just like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Yeah, we can do that. And I was the only one who stood up and said, that shouldn't be a thing on a brand new aircraft. Like, that's not even something I should have to do on a brand new car. So at that point, because I said no, a lot of other people at that point started following. Sometimes you have to be the first person who steps out and put yourself on a limb. But if you do it with the tech data guiding you or the regulations guiding you, you're not wrong.
I love that part, and especially being the squeaky wheel. And it definitely helps too when you have a manager or a leader that's there to at least like either A, back you up or not berate you in front of everybody.
Well, that's what I'm trying to fix, sir. I want these techs to feel safe and doing their job to their knowledge.
I appreciate you. We appreciate your efforts in doing so in any of that. Do you have any follow-ups or anything else you'd like to add, Mr. MVP?
Mr. MVP. So.
Go ahead, Rod.
I just lost it.
Damn. Well, better go FOD walk to find it.
Oh boy, I don't do FOD walks anymore. I haven't done that shit since I was active duty.
That's hilarious. And what's so funny is you and I were talking about it earlier today.
FOD walks?
Well, at least the metric side of it, we were.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't work the flight line. My guys, I have several techs who've never touched an aircraft, and that bothers me. Like, we all work aircraft, but they've never touched one.
I mean, I can see that because, like, especially like the back shop dudes.
Yeah,
their life.
We work on pieces.
You know, like your existence of aircraft is just knowing that these parts will eventually find its way to an airplane. That's about it, you know. Like,
yeah, and we have a part of the manufacturing process of one of the aircraft at our site, and I mean we do everything because, like I said, we're not attached to any program. We do testing for other aircraft and everything. Mm-hmm. And I just lost my train of thought. These Modelos are kicking my ass tonight.
I love it. Anything else, Mr. MVP?
No. Well, I say no, and then I keep talking. So yeah, sure. Appreciate you coming on, Rod, and talk with us, and I appreciate the sanity checks talks we have on a daily basis.
Oh, absolutely, sir. I love them. I look forward to you messaging me. I know that recently I haven't been online too much, and that's about to end again. Yeah, so our morale is about to increase for both of us again.
Okay, because I meant to tell you that earlier today. I almost went, Mother Frencher, look who's finally online this week.
Yeah, I've been prepping for a project, and I I will say this. I've gotten a lot of kudos for my organization effort for all these parts because I just built it to kit, and like we know every part number, name, and spot that everything's in. And I don't think any of my coworkers have ever seen that. That's what I was so busy with. But we know exactly what we're doing right now. So that's like a first time for even my coworker, my co-manager. He's never even seen this before.
Now, here's the real question. Do you think that will reflect in your review?
Absolutely not. But to be fair, I go into every year expecting to only get a successful and nothing higher, like the bare minimum, because I know I'm a pain in the ass.
Well, like you said, the squeaky wheel. You gotta be the squeaky wheel.
Like in the military, they kind of appreciated that. They wanted somebody to point it out. But my boss he's not accustomed to that. And when I point out stuff, he's just hearing he has more work. So like I said, I just go into every year expecting to get that successful performer, nothing like a top performer or exceeding or anything like that, just because I'm a pain in the ass. But I accept that. Gladly accept it.
That's just us in aviation in general. You know what I mean? Like, as long as I don't go less, I'm good.
I mean, the only lower I can go is like an actual negative review. And I'm okay with that. Like I said, if I'm meeting the goals of my boss, but I have a team that responds to me really well, and even when we've had overtime, they're like, okay, cool. Well, we got it. I feel like those are the people that I would rather promote than somebody that like meets all the boss's demands at the expense of the team.
Yes. Thank you.
I would agree with you, but that's why those people don't get promoted.
Yeah, I know.
Because
absolutely.
The boss takes that and says, hey, look what I did. Without me doing what I did, he wouldn't be able to make that team operate as efficiently as they did. I literally ran into that the other year.
Yep.
It was one of those like, hey, here's the team I did. And their response was, yep. And if I didn't hire you, none of that would have happened. And you're like, Jesus Christ. You can't even just say, not even a thank you. You can't even just give me a thanks. And a firm handshake.
That's part of what I teach is making sure that leaders know that we can appreciate our people even when they're just doing a successful job. I mean, there's nothing that says I can't say thank you for doing your job out there.
Right. And, and by the same token, they said, well, if I didn't hire you, you wouldn't have, so, by me hiring you is what made the team great. And you're like, yeah, I don't think you understand the kind of power I have that I can also be that one person who brings the entire team down. Just as I built it, I can also collapse it.
I've warned my people before because they're not always on the same team. And I appreciate that my team is always on the same side. And when they're fighting amongst each other, I will straight up tell them, if you need me to be the bad guy, I will be.
and that goes back to like being that cloud in the room, right? Like it's either we're all good to go or someone just has to be the bad one. It just makes everything suck.
If somebody else wants to be the bad one, I can up that game and make all of them against me and put them on the same team again.
Yeah, I love that.
Nothing brings people together like a common enemy.
Exactly. And I can be that asshole. I don't like it, but I can be that person for them if they needed me to be.
There's a new Wizard of Oz movie coming out. It's called Wicked. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the origin story of the Wicked Witch of the West and Glinda, right? And the Good Witch Glinda. And basically, the Wicked Witch of the West became who she was because they needed a common enemy. The Land of Oz needed a common enemy to unite against. And so that's kind of how it was. So
I mean, I signed up to be a manager and a leader. I know how to lead in different ways. And I would much rather lead in my personal favorite, which is very respect-based. Just knocked my headphones out of my ears. I would much rather lead a team based on respect because they always respond so well to it. But if they're not on the same side and I need to get them on the same side, there are methods to do that.
Oh yeah, I'm all about that. I'm all about that too. Rod, it was definitely a fun time. We definitely need to do this again.
I would love to. It was great. This is, like I said earlier, before all this is my first podcast. This was fun.
Hey, look at us classing up. Well, where can people find you, Rod? Like as far as like some of your leadership courses or leadership.
My business is known as Leadership AF. That's a double entendre or a twofer for those who don't know what a double entendre is. It has two meanings. One, yes, it absolutely means as fuck, leadership as fuck. But it also means Leadership Air Force because that's where I was taught my leadership and where I really found my leadership, how it worked well for me. Mm-hmm. I'm on LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram. I've been really focusing on LinkedIn lately as I'm trying to build this business so we can teach new managers, existing executives, generalized leadership. So our teams and ourselves will have a better output, if that makes sense. Because I mean, a bad executive can have just as much negative impact as a bad manager or a bad member of a team.
Fully agree with this. I 100% agree with this.
So if I can get everybody on the same page of respecting people, using policy to make decisions objectively rather than subjectively, like these are some of the things I go into. And I've found that when I made decisions objectively and was transparent with it with my technicians, they always were like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And they were more willing to do the job than I needed them to do.
Love that. I freaking love it. So for everyone out there, just follow Rod, Leadership AF on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and I think I said them all, right?
Yep, you got them.
I said them all. Okay. Yep. I keep feeling like I'm always missing one. Follow him. He has a lot of great tips, a lot of great lessons. And for those who are willing, you can sign up and actually take a course with Rod on Leadership AF. But hey, let us know what you guys think. Like, what sort of stuff really makes you want to learn? What sort of stuff helps you on the technical side? Have you ever had a manager that was good, bad, or one of those like he's their assigned manager, but you actually have a a silent or unofficial manager that you actually go to for stuff? Because I've had those too.
Oh, I have some of those guys loaned out right now. So, yep, they know what you're talking about.
Definitely let us know in the comments, on our social medias, emails, our website, whichever is the easiest way for you. The absolute best way to get a hold of us, have conversations just like these, if not more, is on our Discord channel via Patreon. On that note, hey, we appreciate y'all again for listening, and we'll see y'all on the next one. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
We would like to take this time to thank our patrons for supporting our show and allowing us to make episodes, maintain our gear, and create merch for all of our listeners. With special thanks to Erica Lamont, Chris Hawkins, Eric Shaw, Dan Schubert, Ryan Frushauer, Kyle Keir, Mike Sherwood, Caleb Stockhill, and Jennifer Brofer. Thank you all so much for your support and patronage. If you like our show, please support us on Patreon. You'll receive awesome perks like access to our private Discord, discounts and early access to our merch, first glimpse of our comics and other projects, and so much more. You can further support us and show off your prowess as an aircraft specialist by visiting our shop at cancelformaintenance.com. If you like classy or rugged watches, visit our affiliate Rockwell Time at rockwelltime.com. Use the code CX, the number 4MX to save 10% off your total order. If you have suggestions for the show or you'd like to be a guest on the show, send us a line on our contact us section at cancelformaintenance.com, and we'll do what we can to get both your ideas and yourself on the show. Please support us on social media like Facebook at Cancel for Maintenance, Instagram at CANX for Maintenance Podcast, or Twitter at CXMX Podcast. Please check out our new comic series on the Tapas app. Like, share, subscribe, and comment on our comics. Let us know what you think. Thank you all so much for your support and listenership, and we will catch you all next time.